If you're listening to this, it means I've already woken up. And if you still think fear begins when monsters appear, you're wrong. Fear starts earlier. It starts the moment you hear something for the first time, something that is trying to be you. Part 1. The House. I didn't rent the house because I wanted an adventure. I rented it because I needed silence. Divorce only looks civilized on paper. Agreements, asset division, custody. In real life, it's a mind that never shuts off. It's the habit of checking your phone every 10 minutes. It's the feeling that something inside your body has gone hollow and keeps ringing. The house stood on the edge of a small town, not too far from Yellowstone. A normal rental, no neighbors, decent internet, exactly what an IT guy needs when he's given 2 weeks of remote work and told, "Get yourself together." When I walked in for the first time, everything looked perfect. A clean kitchen, a warm living room, a bedroom upstairs, and one door downstairs leading to a room with no purpose. It wasn't locked. I looked inside and saw emptiness, bare floor, white walls, no outlets, no ceiling light, just a small window high near the ceiling, like an eye. The room felt wrong, not scary, just not like the rest of the house. I closed the door, started unpacking, told myself it's just an unfinished storage room, that's all. The problem is, in stories like this, that's all never lasts very long. Part 2. The First Night. The first night, I woke up on my own, not because of a loud sound, but because it felt like someone had changed the air in the room. You know that feeling when you open a basement door or step into a place no one's been in for a long time. The air gets heavier and your breathing becomes noticeable. I lay there in the dark, listening, and that's when I heard it. Breathing. Downstairs from the empty room. At first, it sounded unsure, like someone was testing it. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. The pauses were too even, too mechanical. I threw off the blanket and sat up, checked my phone, 0212. The breathing downstairs continued. I stood up and walked barefoot down the hallway. The floorboards were cold but alive. The house creaked the way all houses do. I went downstairs, didn't turn on the lights, stopped in front of the door to the empty room. The breathing was louder now, closer, like someone was standing right behind the door, learning how to do it properly. I touched the doorknob, and the breathing stopped, instantly, sharp. Like whatever was in there realized it had been heard. I stood there for a full minute. Nothing. I told myself, pipes, wind, the house settling, mice. And just as I was about to turn away, a sound came from behind the door. Very quiet, not a word, not a whisper, just an attempt to repeat my own exhale, perfectly matched, down to the tone. It was so wrong, my hands went cold. I didn't open the door. I went back upstairs, and it wasn't until I reached the bedroom that I realized I'd been holding my breath for far too long. Part 3. It's learning. During the day, everything felt normal. Sunlight, coffee, video calls, spreadsheets, work, the kind that saves you because it leaves no room for your thoughts. But every time I walked past the door to that room, I had the feeling it was paying attention, just a little more than a normal door should. That evening, I tried to distract myself, put on a movie, poured a glass of whiskey, sent a couple of messages to a friend. He replied, "How's the silence?" I typed back, "Great, perfect, almost too perfect." Then I deleted it, because the breathing started again downstairs, only this time it wasn't mechanical. This time it was trying to match mine. I sat in the living room and heard myself inhale, and downstairs an inhale, half a second late, like an echo in an empty hall. I exhaled, and downstairs an exhale. I wanted to test it. Maybe it really was an echo. Maybe the house was built that way. I held my breath. Downstairs, it held its breath too. I let out a sharp exhale. Downstairs, a sharp exhale, slightly delayed. A cold wave ran down my spine. That wasn't an echo. An echo doesn't choose when to exist. An echo doesn't stop when you stop. I turned off the TV. The house fell silent. And inside that silence, I heard something moving downstairs. Not footsteps, more like legs searching for the floor, like someone learning how to stand. Part 4. The First Signs. On the third morning, I noticed the bruises. 3 dark marks under my ribs, on the left side, a place you don't usually hit. I stood in front of the mirror, trying to remember. Did I fall? Did I hit something? Did I sleep on something wrong? Nothing. The bruises looked like finger marks, too even, too human. I told myself, you tossed and turned, you twisted in your sleep, blood pressure, burst vessels. And still, a thought surfaced in my head. Someone was holding you from the inside. Later that same day, something else happened. I was walking through the kitchen, picked up a mug, and realized my hand was moving strangely, with a slight delay. I brought the mug to my lips, and it felt like my hand arrived a fraction of a second later than it should have. It was such a small thing that a normal person wouldn't even notice. But once you've heard breathing coming from an empty room, you notice everything. I tried to laugh it off. The laugh came out dry. Part 5. The Recording. I set up a camera, not because I'm a ghost hunter, but because I needed to be sure I wasn't losing my mind. I grabbed an old webcam, connected it to my laptop, and placed it on a tripod. Then I opened the door to the empty room. It greeted me with cold, not cool, cold. The kind that doesn't depend on air temperature, like a refrigerator, like stone in the shade. I positioned the camera so it captured the entire room. Empty, white walls, bare floor. I went back to the living room and left the recording running overnight. At 3 a.m., I woke up on my own, like something had shoved me from the inside, and I heard the breathing again, downstairs. I didn't go down. I just lay there, listening as it copied me. Sometime before morning, I fell asleep. In the morning, without washing my face, without making coffee, the first thing I did was open the recording. The video looked normal. The room was empty, no shadows, no figures, but the audio. There were 2 layers, my footsteps from when I set up the camera, and other footsteps, delayed, as if someone was walking exactly in my path, but half a second behind. I rewound it again and again. Then I heard something that made my fingers start to shake. My voice, only it wasn't saying what I remembered saying. I heard myself whisper, "All right, it's fine, just a room." And then, with a delay, my voice again, quieter, said, "If you don't come in, I'll come out on my own." My chest went hollow and cold. I shut off the recording, and at that exact moment, the door to the empty room, the same door I had closed the night before, let out a soft creak. It didn't swing open, it just cracked open about an inch, like the house had taken a breath. Part 6. The Ear. That night, I didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't watch anything. I just sat there and listened to the house. Midnight, silence. 1 a.m., silence. 2 a.m., silence. And then at 2:49, my ear started to hurt. At first, it felt like water after swimming, uncomfortable but manageable. Then it started itching. Then came the feeling that something inside my ear was moving. I stood up, went to the bathroom, and grabbed a cotton swab. Don't do that, I know, but at that moment, I didn't care about advice. I ran the swab inside my ear, and when I pulled it out, there was blood on it. Not much, just enough to see the red streak. I stared at it like proof that this was all real. That's when I looked up and saw my face in the mirror above the sink. A normal face, tired, pale, except my eyes didn't blink at the same time. The left one blinked first, the right one followed a fraction of a second later. I blinked again, fast, hard. For a moment, it felt like someone else blinked in the reflection instead of me. I wiped away the blood, rinsed my ear. Then I turned on the hallway light. The door to the empty room was slightly open, even though I remembered closing it. I stood there staring at it, and inside my head, not through my ears, not as a sound, but right there, like a thought someone planted, a sentence formed, calm, firm, in my own voice. "You're not using the body completely. Let me try." I recoiled. "No," I said out loud, because silence felt worse. "No, get out." In response, a quiet inhale came from the room. It sounded almost pleased. Part 7. It's making me. The next 24 hours passed in a fog. I tried to work, but the code blurred in front of my eyes. I tried to eat, but the food felt like cotton. I tried to convince myself that I needed to see a doctor and immediately caught another thought. Don't leave. Don't leave the house. If you do, it will come out. That's when I stopped trusting my own thoughts. By evening, I had a fever. Not high, just over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but enough to make my body feel foreign, like it no longer belonged to me. My ear kept itching. Sometimes I heard a quiet, wet sound inside it, like someone dragging a finger along the inside of the ear canal. I turned the camera recording back on. This time, the audio was worse. Static. And inside that static, breathing. Only now it wasn't copying me. It was ahead of me, like it had learned. Then I heard another sentence, very quiet. "You're empty. I can feel you." I slammed the laptop shut, and in that exact moment, I felt something under the skin of my neck move. Not painful, not strong, more like the sensation of a drop of water sliding over your skin. except the drop was inside. I grabbed my neck, fingers pressing into the skin, feeling for my pulse. The pulse was steady, but under my fingers there was the unmistakable sense that the skin didn't fully belong to me anymore. Part 8. The empty room grew. That night, the house was too quiet. When there's no wind, no rain, no neighbors, silence becomes dense. You can hear everything inside it. I lay in bed, listening as the floor downstairs creaked slowly, not from footsteps, more like weight being shifted. Carefully, heaviness, caution. I knew that if I didn't go down, it would come to me. Not physically, it didn't need to. It was already inside my body, in the delayed movements, in the uneven blinking, in my ear. But I went downstairs anyway, because waiting is the worst part. I turned on the hallway light. The first floor was colder. The door to the empty room was wide open. I stood in the doorway and looked inside. The room was the same and not the same. It looked deeper, like the walls had been pushed back by a few feet. The ceiling was higher. The small window near the ceiling felt farther away. It was impossible. I knew that, and still I saw it. I stepped inside. The air turned thick, like a room with bad ventilation, like the air had become liquid and I was walking into it. I took another step, and that's when I saw myself. In the center of the room, sitting on the floor, was a man with his back to me, wearing my t-shirt, my lounge pants. He sat the way people sit when they've been waiting for a very long time. I couldn't scream. My throat felt crushed. What is this? I forced out. Who are you? The man slowly turned his head, and I saw my own face, calmer, cleaner, without my exhaustion. He looked at me the way you look at something that has finally been put back where it belongs. I'm what was left when you stopped being whole. I took a step back and realized the floor behind me was farther away, as if the entrance had shifted. The room wasn't holding me by force, it was just changing distances. This is hallucinations, I said, because my mind desperately wanted logic. I have an infection, my ear, a fever. Yes, your ear. He raised his hand and touched his ear, my ear. Do you remember the fishing trip 3 weeks ago? Water, laughter. You thought it was over. I froze. I had gone fishing with friends before the move. We stood knee-deep in cold water. I slipped, went under. Something dirty got into my ear. I cursed. I laughed. It was a normal memory, but now it sounded like a sentence. You let me in through a hole in the body, through the ear, through weakness, through your habit of not treating anything until it becomes a problem. And then you let me in through something else, through your head. You're not real, I whispered, real enough to breathe with your lungs. And in that moment, I felt an inhale happen on its own, not by me, like air was pulled into my chest without my permission. I grabbed my throat. See, you're already sharing the body. Part 9. The attempt to escape. I lunged for the exit. The door was still there, but the distance to it was wrong. I ran, and the floor seemed to stretch beneath me. My legs grew heavy, like someone was wrapping my joints in wet bandages. A loud ringing filled my ears, and through that noise I heard a voice. Not his, another one, thin, quiet, crying. The same crying from the first night. It wasn't coming from the room, it was coming from inside me. I stopped because I didn't stop myself. My body froze like it had received a command. I felt my right arm slowly lifting. On its own, my fingers curling. I watched it the way you watch a stranger's hand.
Don't be afraid. I'm doing this carefully.
Stop, I whispered. Stop it.
You're tired. You've been tired for a long time. You just never admitted it.
Then he said something that truly terrified me.
I can live better than you.
I tried to move, but my body felt soft, unresponsive. So I did the only thing I could. I forced myself to fall, just let myself collapse forward, into the air, into the floor like a sack of weight. And as I fell, a sharp pain tore through my ear, like something had ripped loose. Part 10. The hospital. I woke up because of the smell. Antiseptic, plastic, cold sheets. The light was too bright. I tried to lift my hand, and it moved normally, no delay. There was an oxygen sensor clipped to my finger. I turned my head and saw a white hospital room, a monitor, an IV stand, and a man in a lab coat looking down at a tablet.
Nathan, can you hear me?
I wanted to answer, but my throat was dry. Water, I forced out. He handed me a cup. I drank like someone who had just crossed a desert.
You're in the county hospital. You were found in the house. A neighbor heard the noise. You were screaming. The ambulance arrived quickly.
I lifted my head sharply. The house, I whispered. The room, it was there. The doctor nodded the way doctors nod when people talk about things that shouldn't be confirmed too directly.
We checked the house. There was nothing there that could have physically restrained you.
You don't understand, I said. I saw.
I understand enough. You have an infection. It's rare, but it happens. Most likely it entered through your ear. Water, dirt, micro-injuries. That can cause inflammation, fever, hallucinations, sleep disturbances, anxiety episodes.
These weren't hallucinations, I whispered. It was real. The doctor looked straight into my eyes.
You're lucky you were found. Another day or two, and it could have been much worse. You showed signs of infection-induced psychosis. We did everything we needed to do. You're stabilizing now.
I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that it was real, but my head felt empty. And inside that emptiness, very quietly, like a thought slipping in, I heard a voice.
See, I can be quiet too.
I flinched. The doctor noticed.
Easy. That's residual. It will pass.
I wasn't sure that was the same thing he meant. Part 11. Discharge. They kept me in the hospital for several days. The fever went down. My ear hurt less. The noise in my head grew quieter. And still, sometimes I noticed small things. I blinked and felt like someone else blinked too. I took a step and heard the sound as if the step happened twice. I thought a sentence, and a second later heard it repeated like an echo inside my skull. The doctor said things like post-stress, anxiety disorder, after effects. I nodded. I didn't tell him about the other me, because if I did, they would have kept me longer, and I wanted out. I wanted to go home. I wanted to prove to myself that the house was just a house. On the day of my discharge, I signed the papers, got into a taxi, and went back to collect my things. I asked the driver to stop a block away from the house. I couldn't get any closer. I just couldn't. The front door was closed. The house stood quietly, as if nothing had ever happened. I went inside. It smelled normal. Wood, dust, my clothes. The door to the empty room was closed. I walked up to it and placed my hand on the handle. It was warm, like someone had held it recently. I pulled my hand back and forced myself not to open it. Not today. I packed quickly, almost running, without looking back. When I stepped outside, I slammed the door shut and felt relief. And then I heard my footsteps. I took a step along the path and heard another step, delayed. I stopped. The footsteps stopped too, not immediately. There was one more, an extra one. Like someone took a step after I did. I didn't turn around. I knew that if I did, I would see something I'd never be able to unsee. I just whispered, barely audible, "Please, no." And in response, inside my head, softly, almost tenderly, a voice answered,
I'm not in the house. I've learned how to walk.
Epilogue. If you're listening to this at night, alone, and it feels like you hear an extra step, don't check, don't look for it, because the worst thing is to be sure. The worst thing is when the empty room starts to answer, and when you realize it isn't empty at all. It was just waiting for you to make space inside yourself.